What's up YouTube, this is GalacticGod and welcome to the episode of Yugioh Chat. Now in this episode what I'd like to talk to you guys about is DN and really the effects that DN has had on this game and this community since its release. Now when I first started playing Yugioh, the only real way you could get some duel time in was to either have some of your friends come over and you can duel that way, and you could duel them at school or something like that, or you can go to what would be known as your locals and have a little bit of a tournament there. Now the problem with this is that there's only a certain number of players that you're ever going to duel against in this instance, and eventually you become used to their playstyle, you become used to what kind of cards they like to tech into decks, and you just become used to that meta, if you will, and you don't really get a bigger picture meta, you don't really get a bigger picture of how some of the bigger decks are played. So if you go to a certain locals, or maybe you and your friends can afford some of the more high priced decks, you don't ever duel against them, so you don't ever really think much of them. And then when you go to a big event like a regional or a YCS, you play against these decks, you play against these other players, and you see different ways of playing decks, and you see different tech cards that people use, and you're unaccustomed to that. You're not prepared for it. Now what I believe DN or Dueling Network or even YGOPro or DevPro or any of these online resources have done is they've kind of changed that up. With the introduction of DN into our community, we now have a chance to play against really any kind of deck. And I think that's kind of opened things up. So now when you go to big events, no longer are you used to playing just certain kinds of decks, but you actually played against some of the more high tier decks, the more expensive decks that you normally would not play against when you duel against your friends or at locals. Also, it's giving you a chance to play these decks yourself, so where you wouldn't have to just make a bunch of proxy cards for a deck, you actually get to build the deck and see how the deck works. And that's one of the better things that I think DN has done, because to really understand a deck and know how to beat it, you actually have to use that deck first. I think that once you play a deck, you kind of understand where its strengths and weaknesses are, and then when you duel against it, you kind of know what you can target and what to stay away from. Also, in the format that just passed not too long ago, one of the things that you might have going into an event back in the day when you would take a rogue deck is that people wouldn't understand what you were trying to do. People wouldn't know what the combos were that you were trying to accomplish. People wouldn't know what the win condition of your deck was when you would take one of these off-the-wall decks. With the inclusion of DN and all these things, now people are kind of more used to playing some of these off-the-wall decks. No longer is your crazy deck so unheard of, because they might have run across it in some random DN duel or some random DevPro duel or something like that. And then when you actually duel them at a big event, you're more well prepared. You've seen this deck once or twice before, and you kind of know what they're trying to do, and you kind of know what their win condition is, and you've got maybe a leg up on them because you've actually seen how the deck works. And I think that's one of the things that has been a little bit more better about having DN or DevPro and all these things around. Another thing that I really kind of like is that you're playing different players from all around the globe, really. No longer are you contained to just the meta that is your friends or the meta that is your locals. You also actually get to see different play styles from people all over the place. You get to play against people from different metas around the country, around the world, and from much better players from you. A lot of people have said that you're only as good as the people that you duel against, because if you're dueling, in a kind of, I don't know what you could say, like a not so well community, like your player base is not very good, you're only going to get as good as that player base. But once you start dueling in a better player base, even if you start out as the worst one, eventually you'll learn from these players and you'll rise to their levels. And although DN is not exactly the same as dueling in real life, DevPro is not exactly the same as dueling in real life, no one's saying that, but it is a good way to kind of learn from, and kind of learn from playing against these other players. And finally, the last thing that I really kind of think that's changed the way that DN and stuff has shaped our community is, before there was only certain times that you could really duel. You can only duel on certain days that your locals were happening. You can only duel when you can actually have your friends or buddies over. You can go to school and duel them. Now, let's say I was to work a graveyard shift and get home at like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, I could still hop on DevPro or DN or something and find someone to duel against. Now I can duel on my schedule, and I can get practice in at any time before a big major event. And those are just some of the ways that I think that the online aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh has kind of shaped and changed the way we play the game. In the comment section below, let me know how you think DN, DevPro, and all these other little online resources have changed the way we play Yu-Gi-Oh, have changed the way we actually duel and use this game. And I guess that's about it for now. This is GalacticGod.